If you're struggling with bunny hops, it could be that you're not quite getting one part of it right, because it can be quite complicated. So here are the most common bunny hop mistakes and how to fix them. Struggling with the rear wheel lift. Now this is probably the most common type of bunny hop problem, where people can lift the front wheel, but they just struggle to get the back wheel off the ground at all. Couple of different ways of trying to fix this. First one is to make sure your saddle is low. So if you've got a dropper post, obviously super easy, but if you haven't, just move your seat down, because it's going to help you move around. Because the first reason why people can't lift the back wheel properly is because their hips are too high, and if your saddle's in the way, then you will be too high. You want to finish the first part of the bunny hop, which is the manual, nice and low. So your heels are down, your hips are right down by the back wheel, because then you've got somewhere to stand up from, and it's that shift of weight that lifts the rear wheel. So step one, get nice and low on the manual. To get a really good rear wheel lift, it's quite difficult. Like I said, it's moving that weight, so from down and back to up and forward. It's that shift of weight really starts it off. But you also need a bit of a sort of scoop with the feet. So you go slightly toes down and you almost pull back against the pedals. So it's the weight and that should give you a nice rear wheel pop. Now with clipless pedals, or with clips, whatever you want to call them, it's easier just to pull with the feet. So you do see a lot of people do that, and it's kind of cheating, but it works. It does lift the rear wheel. But I would say to those people, if you then go and practice it on flat pedals, if you're then sort of coming off the pedals and slipping them and whacking your shin, it's probably because you're not quite getting it right. And you will benefit from using that toe down scoop, because basically then you're using your weight better to lift the rear wheel. And also when you move on to using that bunny hop for other things, like getting over technical obstacles or helping your jumping, actually your weight is going forward rather than staying back and just pulling with your feet, where your rear wheel, your weight will stay over the rear wheel. That can be a bit harsh when it comes to riding technical stuff. So practice on flat pedals and practice that toe down scoop at the same time as your hips going up and forward. If the rear wheel lift is your biggest problem, then I would say just try and practice this by itself. So forget the first part of the bunny hop, which is the manual. Pretend you've already done that and just think about trying to lift your rear wheel. So move yourself down and back, like you finish the manual, then up and forward and scoop with the feet. And practice that over and over. Like I said, if you're used to riding clips, try this on flats as well and see if you can get that nice rear wheel lift. Not getting a bunny hop as big as you would like. Well, the first part of this is trying to get a bigger manual. So the higher you get the front wheel, the higher that you can then sort of match it with the rear wheel. So we're always trying to get the wheels to the same height basically, so you match it. And you will nose the bike in, sometimes landing the front wheel first, but that's fine. But I start with getting a bigger manual. So we've done loads of videos on the manual, so hopefully you've seen those already and practice them, because it can be quite a difficult thing to get a really nice manual. But particularly when you're using a manual for a bunny hop, I've said this already, you want to end up low. But to get there, I'm doing this, what I call the L shape. So from my ready position, hips are up here, giving the bike a big pump, so straight down, weight into the bike, and then moving back. And what happens if people don't get a great manual, most of the time it's because they haven't sort of got that L shape. They kind of cut the corner and go down and back at the same time. And that sort of just pumps into the rear wheel, and you don't get that real nice sort of pop of the manual. So really try and practice that one of going straight down and back. Again, like I've just shown you with the rear wheel lift, you can do this in parts and just get a feel for it and then try and get it all together. So step one, start off in your ready position, move down, then back, and then you end up nice and low for that good rear wheel lift as well. The next part of improving the height of your bunny hops is getting the timing right, and this is probably one of the hardest parts, to be fair, because actually when you look at it in different bits, there's quite a lot of things going on to get a good bunny hop. So down, back, up and forward, toe curl and a bit of a scoop against the pedals, and all those things need to feel natural, so you actually do them all in one movement, down, back, up and forward. And timing is key to this. If you get it wrong, you'll kind of get a funny little kind of like a ripple effect. If it starts off wrong and then it just doesn't really happen, and the front wheel lift and back wheel lift, but it won't get a good pop and you won't get a good height with it. So this is really all about practice. And like I said, it should feel like one smooth motion. But sometimes you need to practice each bit to get them nailed and get their muscle memory before you then start practicing on the timing. basically, as soon as your front wheel is lifted and it's coming up towards its peak, you then have to go up to match it. If you let the front wheel get up to its peak and then start dropping, you're not going to get a good rear wheel lift. If you're struggling to get height on a full suspension bike, well, there's no real sort of trick to it. It's the same skill as if you're doing it on a BMX, you know, hardtail, whatever. Same movement, but with a full suspension bike, the suspension is sort of soaking things up a little bit. So you have to work a little bit harder. So now you really need to squash the suspension. So on your first part of the Bunnyhop, where you're doing your pump and manual, you've got to really put some effort into this so your shock is compressing, and then it's going to want to pop with you as well. So you can get it to help you out a bit, as long as that timing's right and you just really exaggerate that pump, the bike is then going to pop back out. One of the other really common mistakes is pulling the bike up into the air. I have talked about this a bit as well. So with clips, people like to just pull with their feet. Like I say, you run out of space. That's the thing about pulling the bike, is you can only pull it as much as your arms and legs bend before the bike hits you. Whereas with using your weight, you're really throwing the front wheel up into the air and you're back here. And then up and forward, same, you're sort of getting out of the way of the bike almost. Whereas if you lift the bike up to you, you can really tell this because people kind of look squashed, especially on jumps. If they've lifted the bike up, they're basically there and then they can't go any higher. So typically it's people with clips, like I said, but also just practice moving around the bike. On a Bunnyhop, you should really see the saddle sort of appear and then disappear. So my next tip is to really film yourself doing this. It's quite easy, everyone's got phones these days with cameras. Try and slow-mo yourself, get your friend to film it, and then watch this video back and see if there's just one of these mistakes you're making, because it will affect how big your Bunnyhop is, or if you're getting one at all basically. And try and pinpoint that one mistake, or maybe a couple, and then just improve that thing. You'll probably find your Bunnyhop all of a sudden will improve. I say all of a sudden, it does take practice, but if you can just identify what it is needs practice, then hey presto. So get out there and practice. It's definitely worthwhile when it comes to riding technical tracks where you can't necessarily sort of ride your bike straight through things. You need to start on weighting. That's all basically coming from a Bunnyhop. And for jumping, like I've said already, if you've got any sort of other problems that I haven't mentioned that are stopping you from getting good Bunnyhops, then leave them down below in comments and I'll try and address those in a future skills video, I guess. Thumbs up if you love hitting jumps on your bike and doing sweet hops.